So according to Taco's expert analysis there, if there is a situation where you have two Phoenixes down and they're sieging your Titan, it's not the position you want to be in.
It's better than hay.
It is better than hay. Hey. So game 2, what do we need to see different coming out from Valance here? They went with a 3 Guardian strategy. It worked well in the early game, but they didn't manage to capitalize on it towards the middle and late stages.
Obey just countered that a little bit too hard with the way that they played so passively, forfeiting early on objectives and pressure that once they recognized that they weren't getting the better end of those early on team fights. Valance need to play a little bit more late game oriented. They need at least one hyper carry on their side. Scotty and Medusa, while great dual hunters to run with a tanky composition, at the same time you have to be concerned when one Ram is able to just immediately eradicate all of that potential because he's just chunking everybody and completely decimating your team.
Well, it appears Obeys are saying if it's not broke, don't fix it. They've banned Kabrak and Hon Bats, Amaterasu Toth again on the other side, and immediately it's Terra, but this time Valance are going to switch it up by taking Fafnir for themselves. Really
like the Fafnir pickup by Valance as well, because Terra and Fafnir is the main reason why that worked as well as it did is because when you have the sustain coming through and you have Fafnir who just has he is so annoying. Realistically, it's incredibly difficult trying to not only peel around him but dealing with the sustain and having to constantly worry about that while you're just getting chunked down. So for Valance to immediately opt and take this away from EmilZy as well as the Zeus from PrettyPriMe, I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it, but at the same time, it becomes really difficult when you have to play into what you just used.
Well, CaptainTwig here, going to go with a Serqet this game instead. That kind of dissuades Valance from wanting to use any healers this game.
Not necessarily dissuades them from a healer composition. I don't think that was more the game plan that they had going once the Fafnir.
Is it more mobility, early game potential?
Not really early game potential, but Valance is a team that really favors the tankier compositions, even if it didn't necessarily work out for them in that last game because they were lacking that hyper carry presence, unlike Obey. But with the Xing 10 coming online for Valance, I can imagine that they're just going to look for one hyper carry and Obey their cut to strategy, and as we saw in that last game with the Ratataskor, he just wanted to jump into the back line, and that's really all he's looking to do again with the Serqet. So Valance just want to pick a little bit more CC oriented. Okay.
Scotty, Odin banned out by Obey, a little bit worried by the Odin ring, lockdown that could come out there, and Funballer Scotty wasn't fun to deal with, so they're going to force him to have to play something like Anhur instead.
Anhur is a very strong pick. That's just a hunter that you can never really go wrong with in the laning phase. He's so comfortable.
Oh, Nox is not something we see too often, and she's not normally that comfortable. Requires a lot of skill to be able to play this god at a high level as well, Taco. To be fair, it is PrettyPriMe playing that though. He was one of the very first people that ever brought original Nox into play, but more lately it's just been EmilZy Stealth, the only one to really show it off.
I actually really like the Nox pickup because they have the setup for it. Nox Serqet can be incredibly annoying to deal with when you have one taunt into the silence coming out from Nox and then the massive lockdown potential. So if Obey get to sit and just play this game slowly again, it could be incredibly difficult for Valance to try and fight into it because they might get the upper hand in the early mid-game stages, but their composition again is lacking that late game presence unlike Obey. So if Obey just waited out, this could very well be the first time that we see Valance fall in a set.
Well, one team might fall here completely. We'll see what happens as we get into this one straight away. At the start, you will see it's EmilZy playing this Terra at the beginning of the game.
And Terra, that's a smart lane. If you're going to put the Terra into the soul or into the support role at this point in time, you want good clear, and that's exactly what Ram can provide. And when you're facing off against Fafnir on her, I wouldn't be surprised to see BigManTingz and Funballer again establish the early lane pressure onto Obey. But I would really like to see Valance play a little bit more aggressively with their invades.
Yeah, with this composition as well, with a Susano on their team and Anhur, who's great in the early game as well, they could look for some early on pressure. Talking about that, it's Obey with the early on pressure onto Funballer here. Good impale from him onto EmilZy. The wraparound is here from BigManTingz. They may look for EmilZy. The hammer hits EmilZy too. Now with Cherryo here as well, they're looking to bring him down. Great pull in there as well from Cherryo to secure first blood for Funball.
And that is an incredibly unfortunate circumstance for EmilZy to play into Valance's trap there. Was not expecting that Susano to be lurking right around the corner.
And the worst thing with this as well is that it was a Terra that they killed, and Terra's level 1 is terrible. She needs that level 2, and that's going to delay her getting it even longer right now. Valance will go for the purple buff one more time, this time investing more into it. PrettyPriMe went and took the babies away from the purple, and did he just secure that? It looks like he did. EmilZy will secure his buff, and now I was talking about the gold lead, so the experience difference, well, he kind of answered that back with that pickup of his own.
That is exactly what you don't want to happen. After you secure the first blood pick, you're feeling good, you're feeling great, you try to pick up the enemy team's buff, and then you lose it last second because the Terra walks back into lane and is able to get her ability off just in time. That is so unfortunate for Valance.
Well, Oracle's going to go the way of Lawbster here. He's going to solo these ones down on his own. Good use of that Zeus in the early stages to give him some vision around this left-hand side and some free gold on his own, especially with Cherryo. Didn't start on his side of the map, if you remember. He was over this left-hand side at the beginning, which we never really spoke about. It has allowed him to get a bit of free farm here, too.
Lawbster opting for a very... I really like this.
The start?
I like his start,
Vanguard
believe it or
Bombers?
not, because he's opting for soloing these buff camps. So with the Vanguard, he's not going to take as much damage from the camps. And then on top of the Boombas, if he's soloing the camps, he's healing
he's not sharing
whatever
it with
he's
Cherryo.
losing.
Yeah, Cherryo's not going to be taking that heal. It'll be him taking the heal instead with the changes to Bombers. Now coming in more into effect. It is obviously week 5 here. EmilZy dashing through the wave, getting some good damage off onto Funballer, who's just got to be very respectful of the clear that's still available for the time being, coming out from Ataraxia and that Rama. I just feel Obey's comp here, Taco, it's a good composition, but it's high execution, high risk, high reward, I feel. Especially with a Nox in the team. If you miss your combo there, you're losing a lot of damage output.
It's always high risk, high reward whenever a Nox and a Serqet are involved. These are two members who rely super heavily around grouping and their team backing them up and following through on their power and engagements, and so if anything, like you mentioned, goes wrong in the slightest, it's just going to spell disaster for Obey.
Well, Ataraxia got a bit lucky there as well. There was one minion left after the Impale hit him into the pillar that blocked the next auto attack that came through. Otherwise, he could have been chipped down a little bit harder than that. But for now, he's fine just to continue farming up. Right-hand side, the Elementals have spawned, and they're going to go the way of Obey. We've not mentioned this yet, but Osiris is slowly sneaking back into competitive play, Tackle. How do we feel about this?
Osiris is one of those characters where you pick Osiris when you want to just slapbox into your lane, and I prefer this pickup for maniaKK, considering how the laning phase went for him last game, where he wasn't necessarily struggling because of himself as much as it was the God matchup. But for him to have the Osiris with so much pressure early on really takes away a lot of the worries that Obey might have had for getting through these early to mid-game stages of the game, because Susano is always going to be very strong and a factor that can disorient the team entirely, get the early pick that you wouldn't want to see coming out onto your team. And so for maniaKK to have the safety that Osiris can provide, I think that was a smart pickup by Obey.
And obviously, it gets him through that laning phase. That's the big key there. We said it's the early game that Valance would really look to try and drive from. And it's one thing that you can kind of exploit against someone like Xing. Xing's 1 through 3. Yeah, he's going to be survivable, but he's not going to have much wave clear, where Osiris will have a bit of a better time because of it.
Certainly, and Osiris, not to mention, he's a
lane bully.
He's a lane bully, and he's completely annoying, especially for a Xing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see maniaKK now being the one to really pressure out Xaliea here. Unlike last time where we saw Xaliea constantly getting the better poke trade.
Well, since that first blood, we've not really seen any of the kills go down. Purple buff will go to Obey again on the left-hand side as the Oracles once again being looked at by Valance. Lawbster and BigManTingz here to be able to pick these up. And this actually, like you said, the Bomber's Mask is still getting utilized pretty well here. Obviously, with him not combining, Lawbster and Cherryo not combining together too much on these camp farming, it does allow them to both sustain a little bit more.
No, and Lawbster, what I really like about the Zeus build is he can recognize that as a Zeus, he's probably going to be target number 1 on the side of Valance, because Anhur, sure, he's got damage and he's annoying, but I would much rather lock down a Zeus or try and force out an ultimate, because like we saw from PrettyPriMe in the first game, there is so much map presence and control when the Zeus ultimate is involved.
Well, on the way back to lane here, I was going to see if we could CaptainTwig could actually find a pick onto Lawbster there, but Lawbster took the scenic route for safety, was a little bit concerned by that. It was wisely done. maniaKK, however, not taking the route he'd really like because Cherryo's trying to turn this around, but now it's Cherryo in trouble, and Xalia's just trying to watch him as this happens. Now he's under the tower. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel defensively used their Twig, was looking for the cleanup on Cherryo if he could. maniaKK did pretty good work there overall, Taco.
Smart recognition by Xaliea and Cherryo to immediately recognize that they were probably going to be getting turned on and to just disengage as fast as possible. Cherryo having to expend his beads, which is kind of unfortunate as a Susano facing off against a Nox Serqet, so he's going to have to play things really carefully if he chooses to try and farm out anything in the mid lane.
Ataraxia just trying to farm up on this left-hand side, but BigManTingz here just to provide a bit of pressure, but mainly for the experience and gold that he really needs to continue escalating his build along a little bit more. He's got Watches Online and Talaria. A couple of different boots options we see on supports nowadays. You can go Talaria if you want the extra gold and the regeneration and the mobility, or you can go for the Shoes of Focus, which we see quite a bit in terms of cooldown reduction, or tank boots as well. Plenty of options in Guardian role now.
EmilZy is going to be opting for a much heavier tank build because when you have to worry about the constant tick damage from Susano with the Bluestone, and then not to mention Zeus damage in general, even with Lawbster having a Vanguard online, once he gets the pen boots, and having pen boots, it's a lot of damage that can catch many Guardians off guard. And considering that EmilZy is really the frontline presence for his team, at this point, it's going to be a lot of pressure put onto him to ensure that he actually stays alive to get off his sustain in these team fights.
Well, 7 minutes in so far, 1-0 still on the clock. Gold is equal. Experience, pretty much the same thing. Only 600 in favor of Valance for the time being. Right-hand side, though, you can see CaptainTwig getting a little bit frisky and actually forced out by Valance there as there was a slow collapse starting to happen, looking to try and steal away speed or blue if possible. Bad news is Valance had already secured their buffs.
Speaking of slow, this is probably going to be another one of those slower game kind of plays.
Well, wait a second, because it looks like there's a bit of pressure in the jungle age. Just as you said, a great knock-up coming out there from Cherryo with that ultimate to slow down the advance of Obey. Good work from maniaKK there to keep pressure onto Lawbster, who's then hit by the Lord of the Afterlife as well. Pulled back into danger thanks to the help of CaptainTwig, and PrettyPriMe will get credit with the in-hand. Next on the fight is Xaliea going to get a big Whirlwind of Rage and steal off onto one target, but he's not going to stop Twig, who's still after BigManTingz. maniaKK trying to continue pressure him forward, but he's getting lower by doing so, and the damage is ticking away. And Cherryo will jump back in, teleporting in to pick up the kill. 1 for 1 so far. Solo dead, mid laner dead, and CaptainTwig forced out as well. Crazy fight.
Interesting that they would choose to fight right then and there, as you're just talking about the game potentially being a much slower play. I feel like they can almost hear me at this point in time, but I'm not surprised considering that they're in a corridor, which is the area that you want to be fighting with a Nox. And at first, I thought that Obey was going to have the pure upper hand in that engagement, but once all of their ultimates had been expended, there's really not much left for them to try and fight into.
Well, Valance did manage to do pretty well in that fight for the simple reason that Cherryo did steal away the speed buff from Obey after the fight entailed, and that's kind of what all these fights are about, Taco, is positioning, getting yourself an advantage where you can then capitalize on that team fight afterwards. So getting the speed did work out well.
It worked out well also in the sense that Cherryo was able to just re-engage time and time again, which is really what you want to be looking for as a Susano. Just be as annoying as possible. Really continue jumping in as often as you can, because if you can constantly, with all the mobility that Susano provides, to constantly be jumping in for the poke and surviving on top of that, it's a really difficult factor to deal with.
Taco, what's Funballer building next? Is that Silver Branch, or is that going to be Odysseus? Like, there's not many options in that tree left.
Looking at the composition from Obey,
would you go Silver Branch here?
You could opt for a Silver Branch if he really wanted to try and lock down PrettyPriMe. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Funballer looking for the Odibo.
And because of Odibo, I guess in one-way Chain Lightning and Odysseus bow both provide the double Chain Lightning effects over and over again. So it's a lot of like sustained damage in team fights, I guess, when you can only hit the target that's presented in front of you.
It's unconventional if he does opt to go that route, but at the same time, it could provide a lot of presence in the team fights for the corridors that Ataraxia looking for a little bit of a cheeky Realm ultimate there.
I think if you could take into account on that one, it was more like he was expecting his team to engage and get the engagement off to a good start and provide damage. But bad news is he trusted his team, and his team let him down.
I really just want to see Funballer back at this point in
Just find
time
out what it is.
to determine whether he's opting for more PrettyPriMe lockdown potential.
I feel it's going to be Odysseus Bow as well, just because it doesn't make sense to go Silver Branch when you're not going to be against a magical AD carrying lane. You know, you're not going to be going up against that. I'm expecting it should be the Odysseus Bow, but we'll find out. At the moment, he's trying to do a bit of his own work at the moment up against Ataraxia, and making sure Ataraxia can't put his best foot forward for the time being. The purple buff is about to spawn, but the oracles are coming up as well for Valance to be able to look to try and pick those up.
The thing is, even if he's not facing off against a magical hunter in that duo lane, it's not going to be a laning phase for much longer. And so if he were to opt for the Silver Branch, considering that the front line from Obey is magical, I mean, it's the Terra, that's the chunk potential that Valance could really utilize to their advantage.
I guess, but I mean, I would just feel Silver Branch, bro, it reduces magical power, right? And who on the side of Valance has magical power on their team? It's Lawbster, if anyone. The Guardian in the solo lane isn't going to have that much magical power to get rid of. And the same for Fafnir to an extent.
It's just, it's so... It's really different. I mean,
it's unusual,
kudos to him, because that would be... If this works out for him and he is able to just burst down PrettyPriMe and really keep him in check, I mean, that is definitely not something I'm looking forward to coming out in ranked, but at the same time, like, it's just
EmilZy's in a
strong.
bit of trouble here, but a nice silence from Prime will stop them continuing to aggress onto him for now. Teleport now coming out from Obey as well as maniaKK joins the fray, and immediately Valance will just back away knowing that they got the teleport for nothing at the same time. Xaliea still has his teleport available. Tell a lie, he just teleported back to the tier 1 on the right hand side, so he's going to get some lane pressure over there, and Obey kind of have to choose what to do. It seems like maniaKK's just going to go back to farming once more.
This is kind of an awkward position for Obey to be in, because you expect the fight to come through as soon as Osiris is teleporting, and now that maniaKK has opted to go back over to that solo lane side, Valance recognizes it immediately, and they want this gold.
EmilZy popping the ult early to get his team here as quick as possible. Silence out from Prime, as is the route onto BigManTingz, but BigManTingz will be able to stake that up, but it's Twig who goes straight in onto Lawbster, and boom goes the dynamite from Prime too. Snipes from the sky from Ataraxia, looking to clean up the kill that was already dead, but they do pick up Xaliea on the front from the silence combo from Prime once more. Cherryo now half health, and the Ataraxia feeling himself will go in as well. maniaKK over the wall, the Lord of the Afterlife, going to pressure BigManTingz away, turn their attention to Funballer, who is also forced to leap out, and Obey will pick up the purple buff and then head back to the Gold Fury.
Valance not only losing their lives with their buffs as well, and this Gold Fury is certainly looking like it's going to go into Obey's favor.
Big man, can he make the play? Hammer time? Not going to happen this time round. Obey get the Gold Fury as well after winning the team fight. What went wrong? What went right in the team fight for Obey there?
The immediate bursting of Lawbster, even with as much of a tanky-oriented build that he's opted to go on the Zeus. Serqet knocks ultimates. I mean, there's no way for anybody on his team to potentially try meting him or to save him. And on top of that, he was really just the target focus there.
Yeah.
Obey had zero issues whatsoever, just all in committing to him, because they recognized immediately, if Lawbster is dead, this team fight is ours. And that's exactly what happened. Lawbster went down, and then everybody just fell into the Nox trap. We saw PrettyPriMe drop his AoE silence and the burst damage coming through on that on top of the root. It's just, there is so much lockdown potential that Obey has should they find themselves in those kind of team fights where the jungle is their advantage, really.
Well, this game very important for both the two teams. Obviously, this is week 5. I said this earlier on. Week 6 is the final week. Only the top 2 teams guarantee themselves a spot at Masters LAN, which will be coming up here at hi-rez Studios as well. And these two teams, Obey, sat on 7 points so far. 2 wins, 1 split. Valance sat on 3 wins, 1 split. Obviously, they've played an additional game than that of Obey, but Obey will be looking for the 2-0 here to even up the scoreboards and actually give Valance their first loss as well. And at the moment, it's looking pretty good.
This is certainly looking like a strong game for Obey. And the thing is, if they pick up a 2-0 here against Valance, that is huge going into week 6.
That's very true. It just gives them a big boon of confidence as well. Their next games for Obey, they're going to be up against Dignitas next. That's a huge game they're going to have to win too, or at least do well with. But for now, they're still up against Valance here. Twig, already not below half health, forced to leap away. Nice silence root combo. Again, look at how much damage a Nox can do if she's able to hit those combos. It's so important, because if you miss either one, you're not going to get any sort of damage off in a fight.
But if you're trying to rely on somebody to land a Nox combo, even if they don't necessarily bring it out all the time, PrettyPrime's your guy. I mean, he's always been mechanically strong and able to land his abilities. I mean, just look at the character that he's known for, Vulcan. That guy's got one of the hardest to hit ultimates in the game without any sort of setup, and he somehow managed to find a way almost every single time he pulls it out.
He does it more often than not.
And so putting him onto a god like Nox and combining it with the backup potential that he has from his team and the setup, that's a really strong place to be in.
So I'm looking at Funballer's build again as we've got a quick pause coming out here between the two teams. And as I look at it here, Taco, Funballer's build that you can see on the screen, Silver Branch Bow.
Silver Branch Bow.
But now he's investing into Titan's Bane as well. That's his next item. This is a very penetration attack speed build, I guess, is the way to look at it.
He doesn't want Prime to be a presence. You saw how much damage he just did to Cherryo. We saw how much damage his ultimate was knocking Lawbster for. If Funballer is able to lock down PrettyPrime and prevent him from getting off his damage as a Nox, that's exactly what you want to happen. And so I'm not opposed to the route that Funballer has opted to go. And you also have to consider that, sure, that's predominantly an item that you see coming forward for magical ADC boxing.
Yeah.
But it provides so much attack speed, which is perfect for trying to compensate for the lack of an attack speed steroid versus this ROM. And since Ataraxia is no doubt going to be building the same way they did last game with the Fatalis into the Titan's Bane and just pen-oriented builds all around from these hunters, the chunk potential on both ends is still very strong.
We'll see what Funballer can do with this build and see if he can make it work for himself, because Fatalis now nearly finished for Ataraxia as well, so he's going to have a little bit more mobility in this lane. Funballer already starting to make the rotation towards the mid lane a little bit. Valance grouped up as 4, but that's leaving a window open for Twig to go into the enemy's jungle and steal away the speed, but can he get out again is the question.
He should be able to escape no problem away from the Susano. Blink having to be expended, though, as Maniac tries to pick up this T1 tower. A little bit of an awkward position.
But he's got a lot of the afterlife to get away as well. The silence comes out, and Xaliea is the one that eats more damage than he would like. Ults too, though, as the ultimate in response comes out from Prime to slow Cherryo and BigManTingz going in. Lawbster and EmilZy trading in the jungle. Lawbster mainly trying to make sure the support can't stay on him. As Lord of the Afterlife finally used by Maniac, looking for one more in-hand to bring down Xaliea, or just use the ability with a slap to pick him up. EmilZy will tank up the tower. Ataraxia raining death from above. Not really. He's playing Rama, not a Thanatos. But Maniac able to tank up the front lines a little bit more. Obey still looking to stay grouped.
And Obey finding the upper hand in that battle, not only securing the T1 tower from Valance and forcing them back into their T2, but the pick onto Xaliea is massive. They did have to expend quite a few ultimates in order to secure it, and that really just goes to display just how tanky the Xing 10 already is, but Obey, potentially, I think they want to fight this.
Well, Funballer has started up this Pole Demon very, very low. The Pole Demon finally is reset. It takes a while to regenerate overall. EmilZy is going to be forced back to base. Maniac keeping 3 busy, and Lawbster's in a lot of trouble here, actually. The stun comes through, and there's Twig to clean it up. The Desert Fury from Funballer broke the stun, but it didn't keep his teammate alive. Maniac still fighting 3. He's still in a world of hurt here. Even with the passive able to walk through the pillar there, he's still going to fall down to Funballer, who makes it a 1-for-1. 5-3. The Portal Demon stays alive.
This will probably be a clean disengage by both teams, just wanting to back to base, heal up after that kind of team fight. Obey did still have a bit of the upper hand in that engagement. Not only did they deter Valance from securing that Portal Demon, which doesn't open up that map pressure to Obey, but they can get this Gold Fury because they know that everybody on Valance had to go home.
And they did. They all went back to base. They're trying to get back to this, but I don't even know if they know the Gold Fury is going on. If they do, Twig is already waiting to find out if someone's going to try and slow them down. Gold Fury goes the way of Obey for the 2nd time, and CaptainTwig will be happy with just the zone work he did there, because for what we've just seen in the last couple of minutes there, Taco, it was Valance grouped up as 4 in mid, which allowed Obey to steal speed, then get the tier 1 on the right-hand side because they're all grouped up in mid, and that develops eventually into that Gold Fury on top of it.
They're somewhat baiting themselves to a sense on the side of Valance to where there's comfort in numbers, but them being grouped and being visible on the map at any point in time, that's just opening up Obey to just sneakily slide into these other areas where they know that Valance aren't going to have anybody to respond towards. And I think that's what's really helping Obey find the upper hands, because their composition, they want picks.
Well,
that's what they're looking for.
You talk about pick. BigManTingz was trying to make a real play happen there, leaping over the wall with the hammer, but immediately Prime sensed it, rooted him in place. EmilZy going to swing around now, though. Root 3 in place. Prime not in position to get the silence root combo off there, just have the silence available. But now it's balanced with 5 members strong again in the mid lane. maniaK on the right is looking to rotate round, but for now, Obey seem happy to be able to just hold off them trying to siege up.
And with the Nox Terra in the mid lane, that's going to be more than enough to deter Valance and just really force them back into their own jungle looking for the farm. But Portal Demon could be the name of the game right now, as we're about to see, I believe, one of the first real engagements around it.
The name of the game is Smite. It's Smite.
Thanks, Hindu.
Smite. There's an ultimate coming out from EmilZy very early on. The mobility and the health will come into play at some point. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel forced by Xaliea there, trying to slow down this advance. And to put it, Xaliea, who's in a world of hurt. Lawbster's ultimate in place. Didn't really do too much damage, except to Ataraxia, who's a little bit too far forward. Talking about far forward, that's maniaKK right now. And he's very low. Meditate will keep him alive, and instead Twig will pick up Xaliea. Ataraxia's snipes rain down again to help out, and BigManTingz is in an awkward spot here. BigManTingz is going to fall too, and that's the front line of Valance shredded, and Obey are still alive.
Only squishies alive on the side of Valance, and with no frontline available, the Portal Demon, that's free. Obey could very easily just look to back here, come back in after buying from winning the team fight, and potentially pressure out this Fire Giant. Although the respawn timers are fairly quick on the side of Valance, so not necessarily a hard engagement from them if they were to look for grouping around that FG. But I think they just want to try and rinse and repeat and really replay how that last engagement went. Just pick off the front line, leave Valance completely susceptible with their back line, because if the back line is no front line, I mean, you're not going to have a back line for much longer.
That's true. Well, they're not going to go for the Fire Gen straight away. They'll take the tier 1 tower that was presented to them in the mid lane as well. Cherryo on the left-hand side did slow Ataraxia down, try to pressure that lane for the moment. The Oracle's about to spawn. There's no real jungle camps for Obey to try and steal away from Valance now. So more than likely, we probably will see a slow dance towards the Fire Giant eventually from both teams.
Oh, for sure. I mean, at this point in time, they didn't necessarily have to go for the Fire Giant there because, like I mentioned, the respawn timers were a little bit too soon. But it's just one of those things where this is kind of just the slow play, slow bleed out that Obey is trying to put onto Valance right now. They've already established a 7k gold lead, which is strong at this point in the game, especially for a composition that is a little bit more oriented towards the late game. Again, like we saw from them in game number 1, they had that late game presence, and they're very well aware of it. They've been executing this Nox composition combo very well, which is really permitting them to find the upper hand in the majority of these team fights.
So the name of the game was Portal Demon. What's the name of the game now?
I hate you.
Why? I'm asking a question. That's a legitimate question. What's the name of the game now?
At this point in time, it's just Fire Giant.
It's Smite! It's Smite, Taco. You said it wrong once, I corrected you, and now you get it wrong again. Come on!
It's not wrong, it's different.
Funballer forced to beads there on the right-hand side. It's alternative facts, is that what you're going to tell me now?
Actually, yes.
Yes, I guess you would. Tier 1 on the left goes down, and now the Tier 2 can be sieged. Remember, Funballer just uses beads there, so Obey will look for an opportunity if they can, but they've only got 3 members on this side, as at the moment, CaptainTwig is dueling with Cherryo, and Cherryo's already had to use the Aegis. The tick damage is going to come into play. Uses the ultimate to try and buy him a moment's notice, but CaptainTwig's having none of that. Soloed in the jungle, maniaKK wanted to try and tickle him to help with the assist, but it didn't help out.
When a Serqet is 3 levels ahead of you and she decides to try and kill you in the jungle, that is so unfortunate for Cherryo to not only lose his life, but his actives as well. Expending the Aegis there and then still dying to the Serqet ultimate. That is a really awkward position to be in.
And Obey really using the map well here, not going for the Fire Giant. Instead, they're spreading Valance thin across the whole map. This is allowing them to get the tier 2 on the left-hand side, but the rest of the team of Valance trying to chase down maniaKK. They're going to get a good ultimate off towards Lawbster, who gets hit by the hammer, but maniaKK's fine. He's just able to just continue walking away. They've not got the damage to kill him yet. Lot of investment going into this to try and kill maniaKK. But look at him. He's huge. He just lived through all that damage. Well,
Are you kidding me?
and
3
now Xalia's dead.
ultimates.
The laugh spam comes in from maniaKK, and Xaliea is now overextended. He needs help from Funballer and BigManTingz, but they've got nothing left, and Xaliea, he will fall down. maniaKK baited for as long as he can, and the spam laugh is good as Twig picks up Funballer too. Obey is routing Valance right now. Valance can't find an answer.
Did maniaKK seriously just run through a T2, 3 people for about a minute?
Yes.
And then have his team completely turn the situation to pick up 2 members?
That's
Well,
correct.
That actually just happened.
And not only that, they're now going to get the Fire Giant hero Obey. Cherryo on the left-hand side will try his best at split pushing just to soak up farm and provide pressure on the map elsewhere. But Obey don't look like they've got a sign of letting up yet. There's only 2 tier 2 towers remaining in this game.
maniaKK even expended his TP to that T1 tower just to ensure that Cherryo could no longer stay split pushing there and trying to even farm, because he hasn't been able to get inside of his jungle at all since probably around the 16-minute mark.
And when you actually look at what maniaKK's built on this Osiris as well, he went for the Pestilence, he wanted magical defense more than anything else, and the Winged Blade will help him out, as well as with the Vanguard to reduce that incoming damage a little bit more. That was all he really needed. That Winged Blade really helped him out when he proc to stop these slows connecting and slowing him down.
Well, when you have the Wingblade proc coming through, and then on top of that you have the Terra ultimate, there's just so much mobility, and plus Osiris is passive whenever that decides to proc. I mean, he's such an issue to try and lock down for Valance right now.
And now he goes straight back to base, sells his Vanguard and picks up Mantle of Discord as well, so even more annoyance to try and deal with as time goes on here. A bit more protections for him as well. Gold Fury goes the way of Obey. They stretch their lead a little bit further now, to up towards 15,000, and the tier 2 tower, the final tier 2 tower of Valance, remains.
This is going to be incredibly difficult for Valance to try and once again hold off Obey. And they really need a super strong Zeus ultimate, Susano ultimate combination if they want to try and find any sort of comeback factor at this stage of the game. Because with the Terra sustain being online, and now especially with Fire Giant regen, if anything, it just becomes so incredibly difficult to try and prevent Obey from just sieging everything that they want. I mean, Valance have already forfeited map pressure entirely. They're not even really extending past where those T1 towers would have been on the map. They're just trying to push out the waves as much as possible to try and deter or slow down Obey when they're looking to siege up these Phoenixes.
And you talked about compositions as well. Obey's composition, the longer it goes towards late game, the more hyper carries they've got, especially with the Rama. Whereas Valance, well, we're getting towards late game, but they've not hit the late game themselves yet, and they don't have the greatest of late games either.
Well, at this point in time, it's not even just the Ram. They also now have to worry about a Serqet. Serqet at this point in the game is such a potent threat.
And now the siege begins. Right inside, Twig doing his best as per usual to keep one member of Valance busy, but maniaKK's going to hit 3 with the tether. Nice route coming out from EmilZy to follow that up, though, and Xaliea forced to use the Lord of the Afterlife, which will force the beat out of one person onto Ataraxia. But now the collapse with Twig coming around the back too. Xalia's already dead. Next on the list is Cherryo. He's dead too. Twig gets that one. Now they fall back after getting the Phoenix and look for the right-hand side, but Ataraxia doesn't. He goes to the sky. He's going to make sure he gets some extra damage onto Funballer, as now the Phoenix on the right is sieged.
And again, Ataraxia just having complete free reign with this Ram. Just non-stop, hold down that left click and put the gas pedal online. And he's got the sustain coming out from his team. He has his front line, and this Titan could be theirs.
There's the frenzy, 25% extra damage, and the burst you can see is huge. Ataraxia gets 1, and they're looking for kills over killing the Titan, but the Titan will fall 2-0 to Obey. They beat Valance and hand Valance their first loss of the spring split.
What a well-played set by Obey. Their patience was absolutely phenomenal and really helped them to secure this clean set win today.
It was a really, really good performance from Obey. Valance, a lot of work to do after looking at that set, but to take you through that set, look at some of the replays and analyze it, we have Aggro and Tully standing by.
Thank you very much, Hindu. Here we are on the desk. Totally, that was I mean, we came into this day saying this set's going to be really good, and it definitely did not disappoint. Obey, really impressive with that 2-0 victory.
And this is going to put him in a tied position with Valance Squad.
Yeah.
Both of them sitting at 10 points at this point. 3-1-0 for Obey. Obey, they don't have a single loss, only one split, whereas Valance Squad, they have that one loss now, so they're going to be struggling in order to get towards that master spot.
Well, they're going to be all right for at least the time being, still sitting in that three-way tie for first place. But let's take a look at game one. In particular, I want to see Ataraxia. He absolutely killed it, played Rom in both games, but game one in particular was very slow-paced, really Obey relying on their Hunter to carry them in the late game.
And it actually got contributed towards EmilZy finding that first blood onto Funballer Scotty to allow Ataraxia the early lane pressure that was basically unavoidable for Funballer. He didn't really have that good of a time after that first blood.
No, I mean, you saw how much damage even the Fafnir can do in that sort of scenario. The Guardian with the solo kill early on, which, like you mentioned, allowed Ataraxia to have a great game in game one. Let's take a look at the stats in game one and see exactly how it broke down. Like I mentioned, this is a very back and forth game. Both teams very, very close in kills, 9-5. Obey was in the lead, but this is a very similar what we're going to see in game two, Toli. The structure damage, Valance was in this game, but they just never got that tower damage.
It was because of the fact that they had the triple Guardian double Hunter that couldn't get ahead. Now, if they were able to get a little bit of a lead in the early to mid game, then that double Hunter would absolutely melt those towers. But those team fights around the jungle was due to Obey's winning it because of PrettyPriMe on the Zeus.
Yeah.
The area of control that he had was just too much really for Valance Squad to handle.
All of Obey had a great set overall. You can really point at any one of them and see who did it really well. But we had to pick one person for replays here for game two, and I believe we went with CaptainTwig. 7 kills on the Serqet, absolutely killed it. Just really set the pace in the mid game. Wasn't really that early game pressure that you sometimes see out of, say, Sinosure, who likes to play this god very aggressive early on. But once the mid game happened, CaptainTwig was really making it happen.
It definitely helped the fact that maniaKK had the lane control in the solo lane to make him allow CaptainTwig to make these kinds of rotations and the plays. And this is what you want out of your jungler. A world-class elite jungler such as CaptainTwig came second place in Worlds last year. Definitely not slowing down anytime soon.
He absolutely killed it. And that last clip that we just saw was after maniaKK absorbed multiple ultimates, ran through a tower, and then baited the entire team in by laughing. Typical maniaKK, you know. He's
very traditional. I actually marked that in my notes. It's just an old school maniaKK just wanting to press W and just go ham.
And VEL.
Can't forget
he
that.
He probably has a macro, let's be real. It's maniaKK. He laughs a lot. Post-game stats for game number 2, like I mentioned, the structure damage is not quite there for Valance. Not able to get a single tower down. That's a big old 0.
No, unfortunately not able to really get anything on board on the side of Valance Squad game number 2 as well. So this was their true test against Obey Alliance so far. They did split against Energy earlier on in the season. Energy still coming on board, but this point in time against Obey is looking like the top contender team out of Europe.
Absolutely. Dignitas is going to have their chance to prove themselves up against Energy later on. Let's take a look at the standings and see exactly where everyone falls. Like we mentioned, a 3-way tie atop Europe right now. 10 points for all of Obey, Dignitas, and Valance. But like I mentioned, our Thursday night Smite matchup, Dignitas versus Energy. It's going to be our last set of the day, and it's going to be an absolute, well, barn burner.
It's going to be a slobber knocker, as some would say, actually.
Shout outs to JB and Golden Boy, of course, who would love those references. And speaking of Golden Boy and just all the casters here at hi-rez, Golden Boy not here, but wherever he likes to do his thing. The caster is going on right now. If you guys think you could do a better job than all of us here at hi-rez, and let's be honest, you probably could, you can go to thecaster.tv, submit your application, and it's a fun time. Absolutely, Toli. If you can get a part of this, be a part of this caster sort of orientation, it's going to be a good time.
I'm going to actually apply.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm going to quit and then apply.
I don't know if I'm going to like your reel, though. Like your little,
my
your
1
little
minute
submission video.
admission?
Yeah, I'm going to sit there and be like, oh, Anatoly. Is that a ring is he wearing a necklace? No tie? Ugh. Losing points for that one.
You gotta evolve and go through the stages.
It's true.
To be fair.
Yeah, you gotta go through
the split, you know?
Yeah.
Every week after week.
You gotta keep the viewers guessing. We're gonna give you a quick break right now before we bring you Eager versus Allegiance. Stay put or just go grab a drink, but be right back. We will be as well.